Julie here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this is Mars Hour, Mars Day, and the Moon is in the toxic degree 18 degree, midheaven between Mercury and Mars, Mars ruling over Black Moon Lilith, Mercury squares Pluto, Venus 22ing. It's Eminem. Okay, now I spoiled it a little bit. You know what is happening. And we need to find a picture for this episode. And I have an idea. I don't think he will let me take this picture. There's a synastry waiting. Okay, is anyone? Okay. They're too personified here. Um, Everybody know that this episode needs to happen. Now here is the thing. Shout out to Trudy. Shout out to Lars. And shout out to all the people whose names I don't know. I don't mean the Rolodex leaks, like the one that exposed them. Now, disclaimer, serious disclaimer. Rolodex, or the Detroux Dossiers. Listen to Annika Lucas. This is basically a structure of a Peter ring. I have to be serious before the jab. This is basically a structure of a Peter ring. Peter rings and extortion cults are ways of oil companies to consolidate wealth with monarchies, banking families, and other milieu. It's basically done by nowadays already cloning and torturing children that become both victims and perpetrators. Each and every person named in this episode, or basically the two people I'm going to do the synastry of, went through beyond inhumane levels of torture, forced to be torturers, and they basically survived in a system that practically none of us would survive. And in fact, this is probably why they depopulate in those ways. So that's the serious disclaimer. The absolutely right rage, we should turn to the wealth consolidation practices and those that consolidate wealth in those ways. Now, the people that got out of such situations, either they were smuggled out, and in any case, even if they were smuggled out, they were basically beginning to attack not more innocent people, but those that told them to attack people. Now, this is beyond challenging, and of course, the more precious somebody is to their bloodline, then they don't let people go that easily, and even then they try to program them to be drug addicted, to be trafficked and traffickers. So that's the serious disclaimer. Now, drop that serious disclaimer. That's a synastry waiting to happen. and, and this is now the idea for the synastry began with yes, basically a picture that Rudy Verstegen was sharing, kind of like the picture that used to run on X of Trumpstein. And that was Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux. Um, and I just cruised by that, so much so because on the other side of the screen there was a Muslim Brotherhood of Satan. Okay, that's kind of like not related, and another topic. And Muslim Brotherhood of Satan were behind targeting people like Geert Wilders. And I just shared the screen. So then I got a do route. I said, okay. And then and I did Mark Rutte's chart. I received Detroux. I said, Detroux's chart. Now this synastry was waiting to happen. And this is the love compatibility between Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux. First of all, let's see. I look at this first time now. As usual, when I look at the chart first time, I don't know what will I see there. Or what eurekas will I have, both serious or funny. So, first of all, This is misleading because key aspect, crucial aspect in your life is written 0 aspects. This is where we know the composite and the Davidson would give us more information because that relationship was a key relationship in both of their lives. 5 aspects of passion, unfortunately 5 aspects of emotional pain, 9 aspects of conflict, some amiable aspect, but only 1 loving aspect. Actually, I'm surprised. I thought it's okay. Pluto solo position. Pluto of Mark Detroux opposing Mark Rutte's sun. Also the midheaven of Mark Detroux opposing Mark Rutte's sun, which means that Mark Rutte, I see, would be associated to something to do with the upbringing of Mark Detroux. Now, Mark Detroux is older than Mark Rutte, but this means that there's a very key relation and a very power abusive relation. And power abusive, it means also that Mark Detroux could have been abusive towards Mark Rutte. Venus Mars in Pisces, trining Sun and Mercury of Mark Detroux. Sun Ketu, oh, Sol of Mark Detroux conjoining Ketu of Mark Rutte. This is where dealing with Mark Rutte, whether Mark Detroux had to violate Mark Rutte or whatever, it means that dealing with Mark Rutte for Detroux would have been like an ego death. Also Mercury Ketu, but for Mark, yes, also Mercury Ketu. So Mercury for Detroux's chart is next to the ascendant, which means that Ketu to ascendant and Ketu of Mercury. Mercury in Detroux's chart rules over the 11th house and the 8th house. So that means that actually running into Mark Rutte could mean loss of materialization of it can also oh my god, okay, it can also mean that Mark Detroux was trying to purge his trauma onto Mark Rutte, because this is attempting to 8th house is trauma, and this is attempting to basically take the violence that Mark Detroux was going through on with this person, on the next person. But that led to ego death. If that happened. Vertex next to Lilith Chiron, again, tells us that there is a point of fate in that connection. And by the way, the picture of Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux shows for Detroux that he was kind of like a diddler. For yeah, Sun square Saturn, Sun of Mark Rutte squares Saturn Rahu of Mark Detroux, which means that there was something about the interaction with Mark Rutte that could have been karmic to the sternness of Mark Detroux. It basically means that Mark Detroux was karmically not letting Mark Rutte be himself, and that would create a karmic crisis in both of their lives. Moon Neptune opposition, Neptune Mars square, and Neptune Mars conjunction. Actually, I have with Mark Rutte Neptune Mars conjunction, but with my Mars, and um, so Mars Neptune conjunction is, first of all, there is something mythical about that conjunction. It's not an easy aspect at all, because there's something fated where one has to just surrender their strategy or their actions. Okay? Um, there is an element of, how should I say that? Let's say for Mark Detroux, no, for Mark Rutte, it means that his strategy began to dissolve. Think about it, the fact that I know about these two people by the picture that they had. Basically, there was a picture of Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux. I'm not sharing it publicly, it's on through the Verstigen, because of the disclaimer that I gave. Okay, this is a fancy industry, it's not, but this is where basically something that Mark Rutte did, or his strategy, also to do with real estate, unelected positions, yeah, is becoming both mysterious but also mythical, leaking where it comes to meeting with Mark Detroux. Okay, basically Detroux brings the planet of mafia, the planet of secret societies, into the planet that is assertion, strategy, what we want in life and how we go after what we want in life for Mark Rutte. Now, for me, it's very interesting because Mark Rutte's Neptune is conjoining my Mars. Okay? For example, that's a chart that in the back of the mind, I was like, yes, I was doing right-wing politician, then I did a Biden chart, and kind of like in the back of the mind, there was, yes, there's this person that's been almost like the Bibi of Netherlands. Okay? In terms of so many years was the prime minister, but that was in the back of the mind. And then it's by fate that I was called to do this chart. And then with NATO, it went like an entire year, and it came about in a really important transits of Rutte. So here, I believe that there was some really important transits in Detroux's life that were bringing that juxtaposition. And more things to do with this. Oh, Moon opposing Neptune. Moon opposing Neptune is a very challenging aspect because this is where one could expect that the other person would be kind of like their savior in their situation, and it can mean that one is dealing with a difficult, like, psychological issue, for some other people even addiction and so on, but also Moon trine Pluto. Moon trine Pluto is actually a favorable aspect that creates emotional vulnerability, can also create possession, um, and is very supportive for when somebody has to go through challenging psychological issues. Unfortunately, also housing issues. Um, but then there is Sun opposing Pluto, which is a fierce ego challenge. Now, this is very interesting for me because as far as the outer planets, I deal with similar aspects with the composite with Mark Rutte. So this is uh, this is very, very, very interesting. Um, Sun sextile Moon is a very good aspect because it means that um, these people are able to see each other. Okay. Mars of Detroux opposing the Uranus-Pluto of Mark Rutte. And another Mars around that had the same problem. Well, and it's between Mercury and Venus. So this is a Mars that is bombarded. By the way, it's in front of my Black Moon Lilith. So it is. I call this the axis of evil. Mars opposing Pluto is one of the most challenging aspects. Mars square Pluto, Mars opposing Pluto. Because yes, I talked about that. It's true. When there was before there was the Mars opposing Pluto, I talked about that. I'm not going to get okay. How should I say that? There are many things that I begin to think right now. I'm not going to get into them. And wow. And also, first of all, let's begin with the Uranus. Mars opposing Uranus is a revolutionary aspect that is can also be around. Let's say, rather than Sheva, I remember when she talked about Mars Uranus hard aspect. She had a father that had this aspect natally, and he was changing and revolutionizing regimes. She was from Bulgaria. And this is, for example, I have Mars conjunction Uranus in composite. First of all, in synastry of one of my colleagues, and in composite with Mark Rutte. And I talk about all the real estate stuff, the Peter Ring stuff, yes, I mean, this is oak meta stuff, because there's still a creative energy to build stuff. And also the relation to the rituals that they do around homosexuality, where some people are gay, and that's like absolutely fine, but they do rituals also of rape of boys. For example, in Netherlands, when the Detroux Dossiers were out, the people forgot the testimonies of the boys. In Helsinki Commission, there were the boys that testified, and they refused to drop their charges because there were also boys in those in those ritual abuse trafficking rings. So basically it means that Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux would have a confrontation about that. Now, here's the thing. I don't know what is true, okay? But they say that somehow jurisdiction person Joris Deming is familiarly connected with Mark Rutte. I don't know if it is true. It's fun gossip, but I don't know if it is true. But in that case, there was definitely something to do with real estate. And this is Mars of Mark Detroux coming to conflict with a place of rebellion. Now, it is a confrontation. It's a very challenging aspect because it's basically a conflict that they two had, and this is on the axis of allies and open enemies. Now, for Mark Rutte, I know because I have this also in my chart. He's a person that gets friends with his enemies, and very likely enemies with his friends, but but this is a combination of these things, and Detroux was playing a significant role here. And this is where Mars is also conjuncting Rutte's Mercury, which means that is ruler of ascendant, which means that there could be yes okay. This is aspect that can bring both passion but also aggression. And what what it looks like me is that Detroux thought that he was going to have this kid without salt, and that kid was throwing salt, wounding him and throwing salt in his wounds, so to speak. And so um, now to the Mars Pluto, very challenging confrontation where Mars is transformed. And for Mark Rutte, Mars rules the ascendant, Mercury, and the Sun. And this means that Mark Detroux, sorry, for Mark, for Mark Rutte, Mars rules the third house and the Moon. Okay. But it's a night chart. Mars is the stronger planet. Um, and for Mark Detroux, Mars is basically ruling over ascendant, Sun, and Mercury. And this means that he himself, the ruler of his own chart, in very challenging, extremely, he's basically pinpointed by the axis of evil in Mark Rutte's chart. And as a person that has ascendant in that axis of evil, I can say that this is not an easy experience for either. It's funny because I ran into Mark Rutte's chart before the Mars opposition Pluto from Cancer and Leo, which was beyond disaster. And it was in the context of Mark Rutte. If you want a triple composite, then I will try to do that. Because it's actually important. I saw, okay, the happenings goes like this. Attend to political assassination of Geertje Wilders. Then there's this David Icke. And he's like, Wilders. So what do you want from Wilders? So he in his page, he was linking to Trudy Verstegen, that was linking to Lars. And Trudy had this Mark and Mark picture. Now, thanks God that it linked to Lars, because this is how I know people were also the victims, which I then confronted with anybody that talked about the politicians. I said they're also victims, and that brought up to the discussion of the wealth consolidation of the wealth families. So the fire was pointed at the people that actually cause the problem, Ba'aden Detroux, Ba'aden Mark and Mark, and so on. But this is how I ran into this one, and then it was like received this do Mark's chart, and I was like, okay, and then later a Detroux. So I basically ran into Mark's chart through the Mark and Mark, and then to the attempt to kidnap Mark Rutte, I was looking at Peter's chart, not this Peter of the Vries, and I was looking what was Peter R. de Vries doing in the COVID, because I said I can't believe he would wear a mask. And I was looking for that Peter R. de Vries 2019, and then I saw all the assassination, because that's what usually shows up, and that they were trying to kidnap Mark Rutte as well and assassinate him. So that's what I remember. So it's kind of like I reached this chart to other charts. It's very interesting. Okay. Marek, what's with that Venus ruling row? I'm the descendant of Mark Detroux. Volcan, are you together? No, this is funny. Okay. Um, but this can also be open enemies. It means Rao of Mark Rutte is on the descendant, which is the partner of Mark Detroux. Now this is okay. Before we go to anywhere, okay, before we go to any assumptions, um, Ketu of Mark Detroux is on the midheaven of Mark Rutte, and the Rahu on the IC of Mark Rutte, where I have my Mars. I have Rahu Mars with Mark Detroux. Rahu Mars Saturn. Is Detroux the handler of Rutte? Or the other way around? I don't know. I mean, but this is it's a very karmic relation. Very, very karmic relation. Bless you. You see, my mama interferes and she's right. So every time I do Mark Rutte's chart, my mama interferes. um, Rahu Saturn. First of all, the fact that Detroux has Rahu Saturn is basically challenging. If you know it, really, it reminds me kind of a combination of this and the Kovan out, because but there's no Kovan out here. Yes, no, it's not. This is no, it's not Kovan out. Kovan out to look for the Pluto Saturn aspects, and where is no Saturn square Saturn. Oh, okay. I had Saturn square Saturn with my ex bestie. There's a very giant X on that bestie. It means that what Mark Detroux was building and what Mark Rutte is building is nay, Saturn trine Saturn. But this was the square of the Sun, but the trine of Saturn. Okay. And no. We're not good. Saturn, okay. This is okay. Saturn trine Saturn, it can be both good and bad because Mark Rutte is night chart. This means that what the karma of Maraken. That's not a good thing to say. Their karmas interact in harmony. Um, oh God. And this is Mars return from Mark Rutte. Oh God. And this is also no, the Saturn is in orb. Lilith. No, it's not Lilith. It's not Lilith. It's not Lilith. We have the same Lilith. It's not Lilith. This is um, Saturn trine Saturn. Saturn trine Rahu. Let's see more about this chart. Incredibly karmic. Incredibly karmic. Jupiter sextile Jupiter. It means that their beliefs harmonize. Uh, uh, a little bit of a disclaimer about that. Me, my astrology teacher, Chris Brennan, and Adolf Hitler have the same Jupiter and the same deacon. so, so okay, it just means that the beliefs somehow harmonize. Um, and yes, I don't agree with everything that Adolf Hitler says. For example, I don't agree with putting women in the kitchen to create more jobs for men, um, because this is very frustrating, and we need to travel as well sometimes. And so, and in general, I mean, that in concentration camps is not something Hitler invented. I mean, we see Biden. Never mind. And the guy that promised to take care of the housing is, yeah, Pluto sextile. Ooh, Pluto of Mark Detroux squaring Neptune of Mark Rutte. This is important. Remember that I talked about the fact that Pluto and Neptune, the sextile between them is separating to become a square. And these two hold in the synastry the energy of Pluto square Neptune. I will meditate on this chart. Jupiter of Mark Rutte is now having Jupiter return, squaring Neptune for Mark Detroux. That can be a crisis, a mythical crisis of belief, but this is problematic around world peace. I tell you what this is exactly. I will tell you what this is. Because they try to push Mark to do a world war, and it's extortion calls. But Jupiter Procyon is for Jupiter Procyon, it is about world peace. And here is this Detroux, Neptune arises, because this Jupiter is actually the same conjunct Neptune, but this is square Neptune of Detroux. So this can be something that can challenge doing world peace and peace negotiations. It is also because the way that they negotiate for peace has to do with consolidation of wealth, which has to do with further raping children and making children go missing. and and you say, yes, what can I say? Oh, nay. um, Ui, Moon of Mark Rutte, Mark Detroux, squaring Pluto and Uranus of Mark Rutte, which means it created a storm inside Mark Detroux, particularly around housing. My moon is sextile. Now let's do the composite. This is hours and hours of joy that I have been saving from myself by not being able to look at that fucking composite. Now, disclaimer, you know that I've been targeted individual. Oak mark. Probably oak that mark too. That's my coping mechanism, okay? Not to target individuals, and wouldn't do such coping mechanism. Moon, oui. They also have a moon Rahu. Wait. Ketu Jupiter. Okay, moon Rahu is one of the most blessful and challenging aspects. Moon Rahu means that the people support one another emotionally. And I'm not doing synastry of Mia Mark. That would thank you very much. If people want to see the triple, then I will do that in Astrodienst. But I'm lazy. And Chiron Lilith conjunction Rahu Moon is conjoining the Nebalgadi. This means that where this place is going, there are a lot of people that try to separate them both, but it kind of like Dana Balgadi will decide on the fate of what happens. It has to do with emotional support, housing. For example, um, this is where they would try to coerce their emotional state, their housing, and their connection, try to make them separate. But with Dana Balgadi, for example, for the other composite is Rao on beta per se. But this one is Dana Balgadi. And Dana Balgadi is basically wealth redistribution. It's also considered sacrifice star, but is wealth redistribution. And this is, you see, here's the thing. Even when we see picture of Mark Detroux, Mark Rutte, okay, we understand it's not just Mark Rutte. And it has to do with housing, and it has to do with emotional state, of course, and motherlands, and masonry. Um, so people begin to understand the structure, and that they can't just point the fire. You look at the Trump stand, for example. They can't just point the fire at Trump, because then they will say, "Oh, also Bill Clinton." But MK Ultra, well, Joe Biden was the head of committee of MK Ultra. Um, so then a Balgadi is kind of like a wealth redistribution planet. Jupiter Ketu. Jupiter Ketu. It means that they're both purging the materialization of faith, philosophy, something to do with children. Uranus Regulus, revolution in the royalty, which of course happens also now. Bisextile of Neptune, Pluto, and Mars and Mercury. Very harmonious aspects. Mars, Sun, Mercury means creative projects together. Kan ook te doen with real estate. Venus on my midheaven, cherchez la femme. and sextile Neptune. Very harmonious aspect. Let me see. And Venus ruling ascendant, trine in Jupiter, Moon ruling midheaven. This is also why I'm the person that talks about this, because this Venus next to my midheaven. And the midheaven on my moon. Conjoining my moon. Ascendant Venn diametrics. Corruption in business and correction of corruption. Venus, like I said, cherchez la femme. Don't try to traffic people. Don't try to traffic people. Anyway, let's look at the Davidson. Very harmonious composite, I have to say. Like, surely, if two people come to you and they have this harmonious composite, I say, look, the composite is looking good. Maybe people will try to separate you two, but all in all, it's looking good. Creative projects together, perhaps real estate. Moon Rao continues to the Davidson. Very, very harmonious aspect. Pluto Lilith. Uranus trines Sol. Nice. Uranus trines Sol. Uranus trines Mars. Nay. Yes, Uranus trines Mars. And trines Venus. This is Baden Kovanout. And Neptune square Jupiter. Saturn 29 degrees Capricorn. Rahu Moon in Leo. Chiron 2 degrees Pisces. Chiron Ketu. Ascendant 28 degrees. 28 degrees Aries. Neptune in a bisextile with Mercury and Lilith and Pluto. Pluto trines Mercury. Look, this is a very harmonious synastry composite, I have to say. Jupiter is the only problem. Something to do with philosophy, religion, children. Yeah, this is all in all a very good synastry and composite, which means that these two can cooperate, can create harmonious cooperation. Now, what would that harmonious cooperation be best doing? Let's look at the composite. What can I say? Well, the best possible outcome would be wealth redistribution. But there is a Chiron next to that moon that is not too far from Lilith. This relationship is definitely about emotional housing, and this is housing, not just real estate. Saturn 0 degree Aquarius also architecture. Moon. The highest planet is Ketu. It means that they came to purge something that the royalty does with children. And move it to something to do with housing. Purging beliefs of the royalty. Also about psychology, but from the moon aspect, science of care, giving. Can be foster homes, but there is a wound around that care. It, you know, okay. Now bring it all together. The wound, the wound around the relationship between Mark Detroux and Mark Rutte is, how should I say that? As we are addressing what happened there, we are there. Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux came to build a wound, and the wound that they are building has to be addressed to curate housing crisis in foster homes, child care, the studies of welfare, and the architecture for housing for the people that have a wound a wound about religious beliefs that to do with sexual sovereignty. For example, ritual satanic abuse, the rape people, they religiously rape people, and Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux came, they were increasing that wound, but increasing it so much so that the world cannot ignore that. And also, I believe as it's going to be discussed more, we're going to know more about that. And the many people that were trying to separate Mark Rutte and Mark Detroux without addressing the wound that this relationship creates, they cannot do that. And to address that, they need to address pedophilia, what creates pedophilia, child care, toxic upbringings, wounds around housing, and even the architecture of housing and the rituals around housing, because Saturn is courses, and how they affect upbringing. I mean, Detroux is coming with his own wound around sexual sovereignty in the home, in his house. For Mark, the Chiron is opposing, it's next to my ascendant, opposing. I can say because Mark Rutte's Chiron is next to my ascendant and 1 degree from my ascendant. And if I can see from my experience what that creates is that all of the wounds of everybody from the past are coming to the forefront, and there is, how should I say that? Because it's next to Saturn. So they tend to be like a course of inflicting wounds in relationships. And for Mark Detroux, it is a wound around sexual sovereignty in the upbringing home, which is the 8th house, Aquarius' 8th house for Netherlands chart. and Pisces I think ninth. Yes, ninth. By the way, I have a Chiron Uranus in Gemini, which is 12th house for Netherlands 1800 chart. 10th for Mark, which is obvious, everybody sees that. And for Mark Detroux, 8th house. And now Chiron is going over Mark Detroux's 8th house. But this is the thing that these two, Mark Detroux and Mark Rutte, they are harming each other because this moon Chiron, but also healing each other. And both the wound increases and the healing increases. It's basically Rahu Chiron. I have Rahu Chiron natally in my chart, and it's basically I probably that would be relatable because I grow, let's say I tend to my Chiron wound, then it seems like there's an even bigger problem. But I learn about it by addressing another wound and another wound. And yes, my wounds have a lot to do with the Rolodex, yes. And is there a triple composite option here? I don't think so. Let's see if there is more than. It was supposed to be a fun episode, I know. But here is the thing. Because those wounds created interactions that are based on trauma and trauma perpetuation. But both of them, with this aspect, will try to resolve traumas. And then they are basically, it's a very challenging, Rahu Moon Chiron. Remember when I addressed this? How many times I said the Rahu Moons, the Rahu Chiron, the Rahu Moon Chiron, and then this shows up. Wait a second. And I was extremely targeted. They targeted my ring, and there was a ring, and it felt something to do with rape with the ring. And I was like, not a pedo ring, not a human trafficking ring. Then I actually put my ring next to my Deneb Algedy talisman and kind of put a needle on it to basically protect from a rape ring and to resolve the issue around that. Then I see through the Verstigen post and a Lars post. But I predicted, I knew Neptune and Saturn are going to go out of Pisces. It's another chapter on the Rolodex Dossier. And Saturn in Aries is names. No, I'm looking for if there is composite for more than one person. For more than two people. I think not here. I think only in, because there used to be. Transits, asteroids, nay. The progressed, let's see if progressed composite. Because this show why now. Okay. There's another consideration that has to be with has and one significant placement I can say is the 22 degrees Saturn around chart of progressed composite. Here it is. This is the why now. 18-degree moon, and it was 80-degree moon Aries when I started. Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Jupiter-Uranus conjunction with Ketu. Jupiter-Uranus is technique to do with like big technologies that are developed. Like Steve Jobs had Jupiter-Uranus, but with Ketu. More, okay, 12 degrees from Ketu is not exactly with Ketu. Mid-heaven 15 Virgo. The mid-heaven was at that point where I started, I think, broadcasting. Ascendant 25 Scorpio. 22 Mercury. Right now, Venus was on the 22. It's a lot of fortune on the degree of assassination for Netherlands 1800 chart. Mercury 22, Rahu with Saturn. Mars 23 Capricorn. For me, is lot of fortune. This is why I addressed this. Mars is taking action. Real estate is all the things. Venus Lilith, Sun, Pisces, Chiron in Pisces. So, Venus Lilith, Sun, trine Neptune, the square Moon, Moon, remediating Rahu and Ketu, Jupiter Uranus closer to Ketu, Saturn Rahu, and Mercury 22. You see, oh my God, I opened this chart and I say there's one chart they have to consider, and this is the 22 Saturn in Aquarius. So, the 22 Saturn in Aquarius, when I was in academia, the person that tried to introduce me to Peter R. de Vries, he had this in his chart. Now, this person also, I don't know, okay, I know that there was both harm and harming, like, I really don't know the everythingness of that, but this is Mercury on that 22, Rahu, and Saturn. There's something fated. Now again, this person could be a person that was harmed from them, that was harming, like, I really don't know. Saturn 7 degrees Aquarius. Okay. Honoring creative energy is all I have to say here. Yeah. Eighteenth degree moon has to do with